talking point tonight. From snooping charges to Enforcement Directorate inquiries, is the opposition now under siege on a daily basis? Is the centre misusing powers to target opposition, as the opposition claims? Or is the opposition raising false alarms without proof, as the government is claiming? Joining me now is Basuri Swaraj, BJP spokesperson, making her debut on the news today. Good to see you, ma'am. Joining me, Supriya Shrinate, the Congress's social media head and national spokesperson, and Priyanka Kakkar, the Aam Aadmi Party spokesperson. Wonderful to have three women politicians today on the show. We don't have to worry about 33% reservation for once. We have 100% women's representation on the show today. Supriya Shrinate, let's start with you, because it's you, among others, who are claiming that you believe that your phones could be, and I use the word could be, being snooped on by the government based on this Apple alert. The government says this is a very generic alert. No one was mentioned, and it's across 150 countries. Did you raise a false alarm much too early? Should you have waited a bit?
Thank you very much for having me on the show, and it's a great evening to be with all of you, including my fellow panelists. It's a habit, is it not? Each time the government is caught on the back foot, they always say this is a false alarm. But the reality is that multiple people from India's opposition, including myself, at 12:09 midnight, I get a message, a threat notification, which I thought was a spam. Till I spoke to my colleagues and found out, no, actually many more people within the party have got this message from Apple. Now, what do you expect us in public life to do? Us in public life are going to raise an issue about it, which we should, because there are three things that I want to point out here. This is not a false negative. What has the government done today? After this issue came to light, the first defense of the government was to stay quiet. When that was not going to work out, they came and did a press conference on the basis of an Apple statement, which is actually on their website since the 22nd of August 2023. So that statement is not given in response to what has happened today. And the third very important thing that the government did was they put the entire onus on people who received these messages. So the government, even during Pegasus or now, has not categorically denied using a spyware network. They have not done that, and that to me is a big issue. I will also say one thing. The false narrative, quote unquote, that they're quoting selectively from the Apple statement is actually misrepresentation of the Apple statement, because the Apple statement actually corroborates what we are saying. They're saying we cannot specifically say which state sponsor did the attack, but it's way too, the finesse is too much, the resources are too high and the funding too big, and it has evolved too much to be caught, but it happens. Now, talking about the false alarms, just last week, in fact last month if I may, just last month in Russia, the Apple threat notification did not just prove that there were 3 phones under surveillance and spyware network was used, but their phones were hacked. So this was not a false alarm. The government has no answers when we quote the FT report, which categorically stated that in March the government had floated tenders from 133 crore rupees to 10,000 crore rupees willing to buy global spyware software. And the last thing that I want to say is, even on Pegasus, the union government has not once, not in the House and not in the highest court of the land, said categorically that they did not use the spyware. The reality, Rajdeep, is that these are measures, these are tools to shut up India's opposition. But you know what? India's opposition cannot be intimidated, and especially not by Mr. Modi, who's out there to save Mr. Adani. And Rahul ji ने बिल्कुल ठीक कहा है, राजा की जान तोते में है और तोते की गर्दन हमारी मुट्ठी में है. That is the reality. This spyware, another spyware, it doesn't intimidate me. You may have spyware on my phone because I've got a threat notification, but if you think I'm going to stop talking and holding you accountable in the government, you've got to be smoking something
I did not stop you, as you made a very long opening statement, so Basuri Swaraj deserves equal opportunity to make a rebuttal. I'm going to come point by point to what Supriya Shrinate has raised. A, she seems to suggest that while this is a generic alert, it is certainly not necessarily a false alarm. And isn't it more than just a coincidence that most of those, at least the ones that we know who've received this alert, are all opposition leaders in this country, barring some individuals who may be associated with government? By and large, all the leaders, the politicians, are all from the opposition. From Supriya, Shrinate to Priyanka Chaturvedi to Mahua Moitra to Asaduddin Owaisi to those in Rahul Gandhi's office, Basuri Swaraj. So prima facie it appears that this alert was sent because there could be the fear that opposition leaders were being targeted by spyware. That's at least what that generic alert of Apple seems to indicate.
Thank you, Rajdeep. Since Supriya ji raised the aspect of Pegasus, so let me just respond to that first.
No, I'll come to Pegasus second. I'll come to Pegasus also. But let's first start. You accept the Apple alert having targeted opposition leaders. They have every reason to claim that they're being spied on. That's their fear, apprehension.
No, then let me answer that first.
Yes.
So I know that Supriya ji was questioning the clarification which has been issued by Apple. I'm not even relying on that. I'm actually going to go to the Apple support page, and I have a printout which is available on the internet. This is the Apple support page, and this is their support quadi about Apple threat notifications and protecting against state sponsors attacks. I'm just going to read out one line at the bottom of the page. It says, detecting such attacks relies on threat intelligence signals that are often imperfect and incomplete. Possible that some Apple threat notifications may be false alarms. These are not my words. These are Apple's words. This is Apple support, which means it has already been certified. It's passed the muster of the Apple company. Having said that, the government takes security and privacy very, very seriously, and that is why the Honorable Minister, Mr. Ashwini Vaishnav, has already said that we are going to go to the bottom of this. There is going to be an investigation. Apple itself has been asked to actually come and join with authentic information for investigation. Now, regarding the whole aspect of what happened, I must say that these are nothing but diversionary tactics by the opposition. I must agree with Mr. Rahul Gandhi for a change that this is distraction. This is politics of distraction. That's exactly what the opposition is doing. In Pegasus as well, they cried wolf. In fact, it was a Congress leadership that refused to submit their phones for inspection before the Supreme Court investigating committee. It was a Supreme Court investigating committee that said there was no Pegasus software available or on these devices. They found just some malware. Now, malware can obviously be attributed to the internet browsing history of an individual, which means that the opposition perhaps needs to introspect their own internet browsing history, which makes them susceptible to cyber attacks.
No, but Basuri Swaraj,
absolutely no political vendetta, nor is there any.
No, Basuri Swaraj, 2 points. The fact is, as Supriya Shrinate is not wrong when she says the government of India has not categorically denied using Pegasus spyware either in Parliament or in the Supreme Court. So again, much like the Apple case, the apprehension is there that the government has something to hide. You see, even in the Apple case, only opposition leaders seem to get the alert. It seemed more than just a coincidence. In the Pegasus case, that the government doesn't categorically deny having used or purchased the spyware in Parliament or Supreme Court leaves questions unanswered.
That is an unfair assessment. No, I'll tell you, that is an unfair assessment. If the government had anything to hide, would we make ourselves available to a Supreme Court investigating committee for when it came to Pegasus? If the government had anything to hide, would the Honorable Minister, Mr. Ashwini Vaishnav, actually volunteer and say, we are going to go and investigate and request Apple to join the investigation itself? Please try and understand. I'm going to rely on one of the reports from your channel itself, and I'm reading from the Apple clarification today. It says that Apple does not attribute the threat notification to any specific state-sponsored attacker. Please try and understand that the reason why Apple even attributes it to a state-sponsored attacker is because of the sophistication of the attack. This is not based either on the source of the attack or on the identity of the attacker. Look, let's jumping to conclusion in order to actually gain political mileage is very, very easy. But this is a very serious allegation. Let's be a very responsible opposition of this country. The government is not snooping on the opposition leaders. And let me tell you, it is not that these alerts were sent only to opposition leaders. In fact, Ashmi Vaishnav ji even said on Twitter, on X, that 150 nations received this particular alert.
Yes,
are you saying that the government is responsible for snooping on all these members of these countries?
Can I please?
No, because we haven't, no minister in the government has received any alert, but opposition leaders have. But Supriya, Shrinate, in Basuri Swaraj, she has given a very, and I'm glad to see a BJP spokesperson coming with well-prepared, pointed comments, which you need to respond to now, Supriya, Shrinate, because the sense is that at the moment, there is a little bit of smoke, but there is no fire.
There is a very simple thing in the English language. Do not complicate the language and use its simplest version. I may just re-quote back to Ms. Swaraj what she has quoted. The Apple statement says, and what's on its website and on its categorical system, it's possible that some Apple threat notifications may be false alarms or that some attacks may not be detected. Read the entire sentence, and the entire sentence says that some may be false alarms, which means there could be other positives, like in the case of Russia just last month, and it also says that some attacks may not be detected. In this case, an attack is possibly detected and a threat notification has come. It's very entitled for the BJP to sit here and say that it is because of our browsing history are we getting alerts like these. The reality, even on the Pegasus case, is that no less than the Supreme Court and the Supreme Court appointed panel said that the government of India did not cooperate in the probe. So you are not all hunky-dory and all clean out there. The reality is you have a lot of questions to answer, including the highest court in the land stating that you did not cooperate with the probe. The reality also is that while you may say that you're not relying on the Apple statement, your minister, who's also the Minister for Railways and says there should be constructive criticism when dead bodies are piling up, in this case has used the Apple statement, and that's his only defense. I also want to say one last thing here, and the last thing that I want to say is what stops the Cabinet Secretary who reports in the government of India to come out there and make a clarification. There are very simple questions. Did we use the software? Did we not use the software? If we use the software, which software did we use? Under what laws have we used it? Because right to privacy is clearly a fundamental right. And no other than the Cabinet Secretary, to whom intelligence agencies report, needs to come out in the open and say it. He kept quiet on Pegasus. He's keeping quiet now. What stops you from winning the opposition's trust by doing something as simple as that? This is cloak and armor, and you just keep doing it all the time. The reality is that I'm quoting a line back to you. You cannot hide behind that statement, because that statement categorically opens up and says that some may be false, which also means that very many else can be positive.
Look,
so what about the positive
Apple
ones?
seems to be playing very safe.
The country not deserve to know?
You know,
and is it an absolute coincidence, Rajdeep?
No,
is it an absolute coincidence?
No, I made the point.
Is it an absolute coincidence that only the opposition members are getting these messages? Come on, I mean, let's put 2 and 2 together. None of us are naive, school-going children here, are we?
Okay, Basuri, one final response before I go to Priyanka, as we then will move to the ED. But the question is, therefore, Basuri Swaraj, that at one level the IT minister comes and says, look, we've got nothing, that all is clear, the opposition is raising a false alarm. At the same time says we'll order a probe. And he's relying entirely on that Apple statement. The Apple statement itself is not categorically there. Supriya is right. It's not categorically denying that there could not be state-sponsored attacks. In fact, it is opening up the possibility of state-sponsored attacks. They've not named anyone, but they're opening up the possibility.
So, Rajdeep, I'll just respond to what Supriya ji said, and I'm going to read the whole. I mean, the sense of entitlement, she was reading back the statement, please permit me to replace it. And as I said, this is not just Apple's statement. I'm relying on the Apple support website. This is the company document. It says, detecting such attacks relies on threat intelligence signals that may be often imperfect, incomplete, and possible that some Apple threat notifications may be false alarms. in such a scenario,
No, one
does it
minute.
not stand to
Supriya, she
prudence
must be allowed
and
to
to
speak.
logic? Please, ma'am, let me finish. Let me finish, ma'am. What I'm saying is that in light of this particular sentence and this statement, which is on the Apple website, which is part of the Apple company document, does it not stand to prudence and to logic that an investigation must be proved? You are the responsible opposition of this country, correct? It is your right to dissent from the government. The government is being extremely mature in its response and being very, very proactive in actually going ahead and investigating this. They have even asked the question to the company in question, Apple itself, to join the investigation with all the relevant material. Please tell me, why this cacophony now? Why this dissent? Are you dissenting, and are you only dissenting for the heck of it? Be a responsible opposition. There is a reasonable doubt that occurs as per the statement, as per the words of Apple itself. And ma'am, please do not selectively read back what I had read to you. If you want, the camera can zoom in. It's the green at the bottom of the page. Kindly see it.
I suggest that the opposition is under siege and hence the cacophony. Yesterday, late night, ED summons issued to Arvind Kejriwal. 2 days ago, Vaibhav Gehlot, the Chief Minister of Rajasthan's son, being summoned by the ED and spending a day, he's been called again. Is the opposition feeling under siege? Even with Mr. Kejriwal's case, at the end of the day, your leader, Manish Sisodia, didn't get bail from the Supreme Court. Every time an opposition leader is summoned by the ED, what is the opposition's charge? That the ED is being misused. But you've got to get bail from the courts. The courts are not providing you relief.
Good evening, Rajdeepji. I'll first begin by, since we were speaking about data breach, there's also another news that 81.5 crore Indians, their data is at risk. It has been revealed on the dark web today that probably there's an Aadhaar data leakage and this data is available for sale. Secondly, I must also tell you, since Bansuri Swaraji mentioned it's probably a deflection technique by the opposition, then probably she also needs to speak about Manipur inflation,
Can we talk about all that later? Today the focus is on, is the opposition under siege? Your own leader.
Yes.
Your own leader is your own party is claiming Arvind Kejriwal is going to be thrown into jail. I mean, even before he's questioned and summoned, you're already saying he's going to be thrown into jail. It seems as if you want to claim martyrdom even before he's investigated.
Absolutely not. You will see this bayan coming from several top leaders in the BJP since yesterday. You will also see that this has been the pattern. You will also see that they have used draconian laws such as PMLA, which kind of permits. Let me give you a brief history. Bansuri Swaraj is a lawyer herself. She'll agree with me. In 2017, the Supreme Court struck down a very unconstitutional provision which said that Section 45 of the PMLA Act, which said that you cannot be asked that a person who has been accused of a heinous crime to prove the case against himself, or you cannot expect a judge to be satisfied at the stage of the bail whether there has been commission of any crime or not, because that would mean that the case has to be entirely heard on merits, all the witnesses have to be heard, all the documents have to be examined. Therefore, this provision is draconian and unconstitutional and must be struck down. Now, the BJP, through Finance Act 2019, came up with a back route and revived this unconstitutional provision, which itself is under challenge in the Supreme Court before a 7-judge bench, likely to come up soon, hopefully. Now, we have also been charged under this draconian provision after it was revived, and therefore possibly the Supreme Court said that the case, which would otherwise take 10 years, must be disposed of in 6 months, because the case has about 264 plus 164 plus 51,000 documents to be examined. Therefore, the court has given, and the court, let me also tell you, if we examine the order at length, the court has dismissed each allegation, which was again Manish Sisodia ji, and I say this with full responsibility, that they are after the opposition. They want to silence a person like Arvind Kejriwal ji. Well, they are under a false belief that they can do that, because Arvind Kejriwal ji presented a model which uplifted its citizens, which provides the least amount of inflation in Delhi, which provides free electricity, free water, free महिलाओं को bus यात्रा, free बुजुर्गों को तीर्थ यात्रा, free education, all of that, and they cannot. The BJP cannot replicate that, and Munafe ka budget. The BJP has not been able to replicate this model in a single state that it rules.
Ma'am, I
Therefore,
want to
the
focus,
only way it knows is
ma'am,
to,
just like in the
negative
case of
politics.
Apple, I want to focus on the case. The case itself, yesterday the Supreme Court, while dismissing Manish Sisodia's bail plea, said a money trail of rupees 338 crores has been tentatively established. The moment you do that, then you can't, I mean, this is the Supreme Court. Are we saying that the Supreme Court is also being run by the government of India? Is that your charge, Priyanka Kakkar, that the Supreme Court is run by the government of India?
Let's please read that statement in context and not out of context. It said that the ED, that the Directorate of Enforcement believes that the profit that the companies made, which over 10 months, because the commission was raised from 5% to 12%, which comprises of 338 crores, are the proceeds of crime. However, the ED has not been able to establish any monies with Manish Sisodia ji. So this 338 is the amount that the companies profited. So there is a policy through which companies made profit, consumers got a good experience, the government made profit, and you are saying there is corruption. Where is the money?
Okay, you're saying where is the money, prove the money charge. But, okay, you made your point, ma'am. Basuri Swaraj, you see, again it's coming back to, you are calling it cacophony. You said when Supriya Shrinate raises alarms over the fact that she's got this Apple alert, it's cacophony of the opposition. When the opposition says ED is being misused, you will probably again say it's cacophony. As a bystander, I just observe that the ED seems to be only focusing on opposition ruled states. I don't see the ED in Madhya Pradesh where there was a massive Vyapam scam. I don't see the ED in Karnataka when your government was in power and there was 40% commission that was alleged against your government. I don't see ED in Haryana where from time to time corruption allegations are made against your ministers but no one seems to go in there. Therefore, the sense one gets is the ED too is being misused. This misuse of agencies of state power is at the heart of this debate.
Rajdeep, I will borrow what you just said 30 seconds ago, that the Supreme Court is not playing any politics, the judiciary of this country is not politicized. Please try and see. I'm just going to read just 4 lines from the Supreme Court order by which Mr. Manish Sisodia's bail was rejected yesterday. It's paragraph 24 in which 11 points were recapitulated from the charge sheet, and then in paragraph 25 the judges say that in the aforesaid discussion and reason stated we are not inclined to grant bail, which means paragraph 24 page 33 becomes the reasoning of the court. Just one couple of lines. The existing excise policy was changed to facilitate and get kickbacks and bribes from the wholesale distributors by enhancing their commission fees from 5% under the old policy to 12% under the new policy. Accordingly, a conspiracy was hatched to carefully draft the new policy, deviating from the expert opinion views to create an ecosystem to assure unjust enrichment of the wholesale distributors at the expense of the government exchequer or the consumer. The illegal income proceeds of crime, as per DOE, would partly be recycled and returned in the form of bribes. So, I saw the PC done by Atishi ji as well, and also what fell from my friend and colleague at the bar, Priyanka ji as well, who said that actually the Supreme Court has asked very tough questions from the ED and has found none of the allegations are made out. This is not true. Prima facie, there is evidence for Aam Aadmi Party leaders to be prosecuted, and that is the finding of the trial court, the High Court and the Supreme Court of India, and that is why Mr. Sisodia continues to be in jail, not granted bail despite being inside for
you're focusing on you're focusing on the Delhi excise policy, but you cleverly avoided my other part of my question, which was it appears at the moment that these prima facie cases only seem to exist in opposition ruled states.
No, that is not correct. That is not correct. I was responding to what Priyanka ji said. I am here as a representative of my party. I have the right to respond to each member of the panel. Now, coming back to the question that you have raised, the ED is independent of the government. The ED is not a mouthpiece of the government. I may be a mouthpiece of the BJP, but the ED is not. It is an autonomous agency which is just doing its job.
I see. It's not a tota.
It is not a cage parrot. If you remember, Justice Lodha had made that.
Perceptionally, when the ED operates in certain cases.
That comment was never made by the Supreme Court qua the ED. Let me remind you.
Yeah, it was in the CBI's context when the UPA was in power.
Comment was never made by Justice Lodha qua ED. Yes.
Okay, let me get Supriya Shrinate, because while Arvind Kejriwal last night has been summoned, Manish Sisodia denied bail, 3 major AAP leaders are in jail. You've also got Vaibhav Gehlot, your own leader, being summoned by the ED. In all these cases, bail is not being easily got by opposition leaders who have been arrested over the last couple of years. So that weakens the opposition case when they turn around and say the ED is being misused. If the ED is being misused, the Supreme Court should intervene and say so.
You know, I must congratulate Basuri Swaraj, and I really mean it wholeheartedly, for having a sense of humor. When she says that ED is not the mouthpiece of the government, I think she has a sense of humor, and we must appreciate her sense of humor. She did make me laugh aloud, and congratulations, Basuri, for that. Basuri ji, sorry, for that. I think you'll be much younger, so you wouldn't mind me saying your name. I would just want to ask Ms. Swaraj one thing. The ED is not a mouthpiece of the government, and the ED is an extremely independent agency that's not acting at the behest of the BJP, and yet the ED is not looking into cases of Suvendu Adhikari or a Narayan Rane or a Hemanto Biswa Sarma or a Yedurappa or the Reddy brothers. You know, the list can go on. They all had ED cases against them. I don't remember the last time they were summoned by ED for questioning.
But can that be a defense, Supriya Shrinate? Can that be a defense? Can that be a defense? There are viewers there who will say, if there is corruption, whether it's opposition or government, as long as due process is followed, they have no problem.
Not at all. Not at all. No, it is not my defense. I am just barely putting out there the hypocrisy of the BJP. You use ED as your best tool to settle your political scores. Fictitious cases are laden against opposition leaders. Is it a coincidence that ED has seen a 4-fold increase in cases and 95% of those cases are against India's opposition, and cases completely go subversive if you join the BJP? Is that a coincidence?
No, but there are two parts to it. Supriya Shrinate, there are two parts. One is, yes, majority of cases are against opposition leaders, but many of those cases are based on hard facts. It's not as if the ED is cooking up facts.
Oh, really? Oh, really? Those hard facts have not led to one conviction in the last 9 years. Not one, actually over 9 years. Now, almost 10 years in office. It has not led to one conviction. So don't tell me what ED has and what the hard facts are, because the reality of the Enforcement Directorate is it has become a tool in the hands of the BJP, much like the CBI and much like the income tax. And is it a coincidence that when Rajasthan is poll bound, the Congress chief in Rajasthan is raided, the Chief Minister's son, who was actually facing an election himself, is summoned in a 12-year-old case? You think these are coincidences? But the reality, Rajdeepas, and I'm happy this is happening. Trust me, I'm very glad this is happening, because this shows the rattled and baffled face of the BJP. They did exactly the same thing in Karnataka. They wouldn't allow our leaders to function. They would keep calling them for questioning. And guess what? We won by an overwhelming majority, because the BJP somewhere has forgotten that you can control the agencies. You cannot control the voting pattern and the minds of our people. And the more you do this, the more overwhelmingly they will vote in our support.
Basuri Swaraj, a final word. As you are seeing Priyanka Kakkar and Supriya Shrinate, they feel legitimately there isn't a level playing field. When it comes to the snooping row, it seems the alerts are only going to opposition leaders. It seems it's only their phones that are under the scanner. When it comes to ED, 95% of the politicians that are being raided by the ED are from the opposition. Naturally, if I'm an opposition leader today, I'll feel under siege. The government is just not being transparent enough, is the accusation.
So allow me to respond to Supriya ji. First of all, Supriya ji, you're my senior. I will never mind if you take my name. And I'm so glad that I brought some cheer to you. Having said that, now let I stand by my what I said earlier, that the ED is not a mouthpiece of the government, and it is not doing the government's bidding. Supriya ji raised the aspect of Suvendu Adhikari, and I say this with personal knowledge. Your alliance partner, Supriya ji, the TMC, is the ruling dispensation in West Bengal. They have lodged frivolous 27 FIRs against Mr. Suvendu Adhikari. He is the leader of the opposition of the Bharatiya Janata Party in West Bengal. And what those FIRs entail? That there was theft of tarpaulin, or there was theft of 2,000 rupees, or that Suvendu Adhikari stole a gold chain. Frivolous, trivial allegations. 27 FIRs have been foisted on him personally. There is a barrage of FIRs against his brothers, his sister-in-law, the entire family.
Basu, you are slightly changing the goalpost. That's the West Bengal government probably acting as the opposition leader, just like the senator in the Sharda and Narda case is staying away from Suvendu Adhikari. Just a minute. Supriya ji, 1 minute.
The matter is, Suvendu Adhikari's aspect was actually raised by Supriya ji. Allow me to finish with facts.
Yes.
That is when the state sponsors and terrorizes the opposition. The ED is only doing its job. Thank you.
So when the West Bengal CID is allegedly misused, it's terrorizing the opposition. When the ED does it,
meted the same treatment by the ED.
Okay.
You do honestly believe that? It's a good joke you've cracked again.
Okay, let's
honestly believe that India's
the
opposition
ED is only doing its job, ma'am.
If
there is kickbacks of 90 to 100 crores rupees in a liquor scam, will the ED not
and the ruling
investigate
alliance
it?
are meted the same treatment by the ED, there is very little I have to say to you.
Okay.
Because we can all talk in lofty generalities, but data proves otherwise.
Can I just stop this for now? I wish we had much more time on this. It is fascinating that we've had 3 very fine women speakers today on the show. And I say it simply because they at least have lifted the quality of the debate. Basuri Swaraj, I had the pleasure of several times interviewing your mother, and having you on the show has aged me. Supriya Shrinate, you were a colleague in journalism, and you've taken your skills as a journalist into politics, and that's great with facts. And Priyanka Kakkar, you're as feisty as ever, and you'll have many more questions to answer in the days ahead. But good to have all of you, and do it without shouting at each other, but rather coming on the show with facts. Now, we leave it to the viewers to judge which facts actually stand the test of scrutiny. Thank you all very much for joining me.